All right, so hello everybody. Welcome to this webinar. We've got two lovely speakers with us today, and I'm just going to introduce this webinar series and who I am first. So this is the fourth installment of the Western Lake Erie Basin Advisory Group's 2026 winter webinar series. So we have these every winter on Zoom so folks can join from wherever they are in the winter and serve as a bridge between our annual conference every year in June. So this webinar series is designed to provide our community with information about managing the environment to reduce nutrient pollution in Michigan's portion of the Western Lake Erie Basin. But we're also today talking about something that can be applied statewide. And this seminar series will continue until April 7th on alternating Tuesdays and Thursdays. And I'm going to post a link to our meetings website in the chat so that you can look for future events that you might want to come to. We have ongoing events throughout the year that may be useful to you. All right. Okay, so my name is Allison. I'm the program manager of this group, and we're a community group that collaboratively works with Michigan's quality of life agencies. So that's Eagle Environment, Great Lakes and Energy, MDARD, Department of Agriculture and Rural Development, and DNR, Department of Natural Resources. Those three agencies are all working together to improve the water quality in Lake Erie. And a lot of that is through managing land in a way that uses conservation practices to protect water quality. And so we are mostly working with the state to help them implement projects better by using our voices from the community to support how they're designing projects and how they're spending money. This group and this webinar series are generously funded by the Herb Family Foundation in Southeast Michigan. So today we're going to welcome two speakers. So first to speak is Jill Donor, the program director at MiFarmLink. Jill is working with a group of passionate agriculture advocates from across Michigan to help grow the MiFarmLink program that helps protect farmland by connecting agricultural landowners looking to sell or lease land with beginning farmers who are looking for land to farm. Jill graduated from Michigan Technological University with a master's in forest ecology and management. And now Jill owns Rustic Roots Farm, where she tends honeybees, poultry, goats, fruit orchard, and a garden, greenhouse production, and woodworking. Jill's really busy. So Jill has served also on the Washtenaw County Conservation District Board for 10 years and is now a Farm Bureau member in District 3. And she has experience in forestry at the Greening of Detroit and Relief, Michigan, as well as working with a diversity of farmers throughout the Washtenaw Farmer Cooperative. Our second speaker is Susan LaCroix, Land Protection Director at Legacy Land Conservancy, safeguarding land in southern Michigan. Susan has been with Legacy for 6 years, and prior to that has also worked with conservancies in New York, Pennsylvania, Washington State, and the southwest corner of Michigan, primarily focused on transactions and leading a dynamic team in all facets of land protection. Her specialties in conservation include problem-solving complicated transactions and crafting funding mosaics as part of a team to fully fund projects. So we're going to welcome both of our speakers. Jill's going to speak first, and she has a few questions for you. And as you think of questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. We will have a Q&A session at the end. You're also welcome to unmute and ask your question at the end. So Jill, I'm going to pass it off to you.
Thank you, Allison. Hello, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining. I do have a little opening poll that I'm hoping is showing up to you here in a minute. There are 3 questions, and it's just to kind of gauge your familiarity with MiFarmLink or the Michigan FarmLink program. Oh yeah, it's already going through. That's great. This is so simultaneous. I've always participated in these and haven't been able to have one myself yet. So this was great. All right, the answers are coming in. And this is good. So have you heard of MiFarmLink or the concept of land linking before? And I like what I'm seeing. The yeses are only 33% and the no's are about 67%. So I love to inform in my presentation here following. So that's good. And it's a relatively new concept, so I'll introduce that to you as we continue and start our presentation. In number two, if you are a landowner, how much land do you own? So 0 to 5 acres, 33%, 5 to 10 acres, 17. No one is in the 10 to 25 category. 25 or plus acres is 31%. And some of you are not landowners yet or do not own land currently, 23%. Okay. And if you are a landowner, question number 3, do you have a succession plan for your land? Yes, 18%, no, 64%, or I'm working on it, 18%. That's excellent. Okay, very good. We'll get the results of that later, Allison, I assume. Great, share results. Okay, cool. Thank you all for taking part in that quiz. I wanted to just make sure I kind of gathered who was in the room today. So now I'm going to go ahead and introduce myself and what I do for the program called MiFarmLink. So here we go. So MiFarmLink, Michigan FarmLink for long, if you want to say that. It's an online platform connecting farmers to farmland. And just introduce myself. Thank you, Allison, for the good intro. Much longer. I'll keep mine short and just share the picture of one of my goats. This is Hershey up in a crabapple tree that fell over in a big storm a couple years ago. And so rather than get rid of it, my goats enjoyed the apple tree for many months afterwards. So yes, I'm a graduate of Michigan Tech University. Go Huskies. I know I'm not in this territory and the WLEB serves more U of M folks, but I did graduate there, Master's of Forest Ecology Management. I own and operate Rustic Roots Farm. You can look it up. I've been a farmer since 2010. That is located in Dexter, Michigan. I have a MEAP verified farm in 4 different systems. So that means you're kind of following environmentally friendly standards to operate your farm. My farm is a unique farm to Michigan, but I guess not to maybe the Washtenaw County area. I'm a specialty diversified farm. So I have honeybees. I manage 50 honeybee hives, poultry, dairy goats. I have a fruit orchard, the veggie garden, the greenhouse production, and then woodworking as well with my husband and I on the side. I do currently serve on the Michigan Farm Bureau Board, and I also serve on the Washtenaw County Conservation District Board now since the move of my program, and I'll get to the history of that in a moment. Fun fact, I was a Peace Corps volunteer in agroforestry in 2005 to 2007 in Paraguay. So this is the point where I like to have everybody close your eyes virtually, if possible, and picture, I just want you to close your eyes and I want you to picture a farmer. And you can shout it out in your screen real quick if you want to, or put it in the chat. What you're imagining right now. And you can even pick an emoji if you want. But just kind of, what do you picture when you think of a farmer? Initial thoughts, go. A hard worker. Love it. Is that for this one? Okay, that is. Overalls. Oh yeah, great. Yep, you gotta love the Carhartt overalls for sure. Who else? Get more descriptive if you can. Or just first thing that pops to your mind. Someone producing food. Oh, up early and late. Yeah, it goes with that hardworking. What about appearance-wise? What do you think of initially? A sun hat, flannel and boots. Yep. Oh, a ball cap. I always have my ball cap on. A male. Yep. Survivalist, subsistence, and coveralls. Multifaceted. Oh, you guys are good. These are coming. Multifaceted person. Ooh, calm farmers out there. That's a good one. All right. ball cap and jeans, a planner, confident. Oh, I love it, you guys. This is great. Yeah, that's good stuff. And you didn't follow the assignment, I gotta say, because what I lead into from after my farmer is I like to talk about our aging farming population. And inevitably, it seems somebody mentions, an old farmer on a tractor, right? An old guy on a tractor. And I think that is what we've typically imagined back in the day. And I think that's what we're kind of growing into this whole new generation of farmers. But my program, MiFarmLink, exists because of this challenge. And right now, we're seeing 35% of Michigan farmers expecting to retire in the next 10 years. So that is a large number of our older farmers, legacy farmers looking to get out of farming and pass that generation on. Farmers over age 65 outnumber those under 35 by a 3-to-1 ratio. And including in that, Michigan lost over 2,000 farms and over 400,000 acres of cropland, according to the last U.S. census in 2017 to 2022. The number one barrier for beginning farmers, land access. We'll go into the multitude of reasons for that. And according to the USDA, 60% of farmers lack that succession plan. So kind of on par with what our poll was suggesting. So we look at this, and our average age of farmers, we're a little younger in the Midwest, I like to think here, with an average age of 56.5 in Michigan. And I do think that has to do with some of our a little bit more regional centers where we have these stronger markets. I think Ann Arbor, Washtenaw County area being one of them. But the average age in the nation is about 58 for your US farmer. You can see up in the top graph that a lot of the older aging population is in the UP or northern lower. The lower part of Michigan is looking pretty good numbers wise. And then you can see again the breakdown by age group of our Michigan farming population. And really it's this whole 55 to 74 age range that has about 50% of the population. So this is kind of the factors that we're dealing with in the trends. What are these barriers to land access right now? Well, if you've been exposed to the news at all, even recently, you're going to be hearing about data centers and solar and larger corporate farms. And so, yes, there are some of those competing factors, and that's why it's actually raising the cost of our farmland here in Michigan. But oftentimes it's other things as well. It's farmland doesn't get listed before it's sold. There isn't a succession plan on the family farm, especially if there's no heir wanting to take over that farmland. And then, of course, the high cost of farmland in this time and day and age. So what are we, who are we, how do we come about? So MiFarmLink aims to connect Michigan farmers with available farmland to support that next generation of growers and keep our state's agricultural legacy strong. So we do this through partnerships and resources and support, but really it's through an online platform that we have available. And I like to describe it as a dating platform for farmers to farmland. It kind of makes it give a little bit more sense because you're going onto this online site and you're creating a profile and you're really selling yourself in a way of how you farm, what farmland you have to offer, what skills do you have, like where your geographic area is. And so when you get online, you are creating that profile about yourself. And I'll explain how we do that profile system. A little bit about our history though. We're a relatively young organization for sure. We just started in 2021 on the west coast of Michigan in Ottawa County. Becky Huttinga was the founder of this thing called MiFarmLink. And farm linking or land linking is a known concept, but Michigan didn't have a platform like that prior to 2021, really. And so this started with a beginning farmer and development rancher grant. And they started basically the first version of MiFarmLink 1.0, I'd like to say. It had farmland profiles that you could put up on the website, but it didn't have other facets to the website that you now see today. So in 2023, MiFarmLink was transferred to Washtenaw County Conservation District. And this is where I was able to pick up the program and kind of take it over. We upgraded its website, the 2.0 version, hopefully the final version as of now. And we developed a 5-year strategic plan to really make sure that MiFarmLink was going to be a statewide resource for all farmers and not just our regional efforts right now. And so, exciting news, just in October of last year, we were able to move MiFarmLink to the Michigan Association of Conservation Districts. They are the larger umbrella advocacy organization for all 75 conservation districts in Michigan. We thought that was really important to tie ourselves to number one, a statewide nonprofit organization, and number two, two conservation districts who were already working with farmers on the ground through their conservation technicians, and they were able to disseminate information about a variety of programs, NRCS programs, conservation planning programs, and then also MiFarmLink as a resource. So this our vision, our long-term vision is thriving and diverse agricultural economy where farmland stays in the hands of farmers. And that is through our securing Michigan's agricultural heritage by bridging the gap between farmers seeking land and farmland owners. So this different approach or land link concept really came about because these two disparate groups, farmers aging out, legacy farmers, and new beginning farmers not having that connecting piece, where historically speaking, the children of farmers would have taken over the land, and or if you knew a farmer in the area, you'd see them at your church or your local coffee shop, and you'd get together and you'd say, hey, I have land available, or and they'd be able to kind of negotiate and lease out land that way. Well, those two groups don't meet anymore in the middle. So we're meeting those farmers where they're at, where our legacy farmers do not have that succession plan. And then our new beginning farmers don't have that access to land. They don't even have a means of connecting and contacting the older generation of farmers. So that comes in where MiFarmLink comes into the middle of that, and these land linking platforms, that kind of concept. So nationwide, farm links, land links, they've been around since the 1990s. The northeast states, you can kind of see, were really the first folks to work on this land linking concept. And they were the ones that have been around since the 1990s, really. Kind of it's spread out to other states, as you can kind of see here. There's about 37 other land links. Majority are nonprofits, I would say, but many of them receive core, state, and federal funding. And you can find more information about this nationwide FarmLink finder through American Farmland Trust. It's a really good resource. So how does this whole platform work? So step one, fairly easy. You post a listing or profile. So you go onto the website, you create kind of this form, and you fill out like how many acres of land I have, if you have a farmland profile, and you describe your land and the property, and you can describe the tenure agreement that you would like to see. Would you like to see your land passed on through a lease? Would you like a mentorship? Would you like to bring somebody, an employee, onto the property first and foremost before you get to an outright sale? It can look a lot of different ways, and it kind of takes farmers through any of the stages that they're already at. So if a farmer is 50 and they're not looking to pass on their land yet, but they're like starting to think about the concept, right? Like you could still utilize this resource and be able to connect with somebody who can take several years then to move into that spot as farming that land. Or you can look at it from the other side where you're the farm seeker and you're putting up a profile and you're saying, okay, I've been to the Michigan State University Organic School. I've been a farmhand for 2 years. I'm really good with dairy goats, so you can bring your expertise to the profile system as well. So then step two, that profile goes to us. We look over it, publish it, make sure the right information is out there between farm seeker and farm owner. And then you have the ability to connect with farmer or farmland. That's when you'll be able to kind of get that information of an email or a telephone number to be able to start that matchmaking process. So once that happens and folks have gone through several connections, a meet and greet, talked on the phone, talked about the property, and they're ready to go to step three, which is kind of finalizing that match. Are you going to lease the land? Are you going to mentorship the land? Are you going to have a mentor on the land? Are you going to make that a sale? So that's kind of comes in, and we provide the services and resources that accompany each of those steps to the process. So if there's questions about that, let me know in the chat and I can answer them. So our connection is to conservation districts, and MiFarmLink is unique in that we connected to them early on because there were already conservation technicians in the field who had the relationship set up with farmers so that they can provide that direct on the ground technical expertise to them. And so they can give them the platform that is MiFarmLink and say, hey, are you looking for a succession plan? This might be the right place to go. Or, hey, you're a new beginning farmer. Have you looked on here? Have you seen property in your area? Does this work for you? They're also the first to know when land's going to change hands. And so they can kind of intercept and get in there first before that land gets sold out from underneath them and the farmer doesn't have exactly the agreement that they want. So what we get to is the success stories, the links, why FarmLink is called links. This is the bread and butter, right? So this is a farmer, Cedarfield Farm. This is Simon and Caitlin. They went on MiFarmLink 2 years ago, and Thomas Lodge had posted his property for sale or for lease, and he was going into the mushroom business, and he didn't have time to work on a CSA or manage the greenhouse and hoop houses. So he posted it on MiFarmLink. These new farmers who didn't have access to land yet and who hadn't farmed to that point were given basically a farm on a platter. So they were given the name of Cedarfield Farm, they were given the CSA, and they were able to really define a new group of customers for their farm. So they became really successful. And they were in year 2 last year of taking over that name and that market production for Cedarfield Farm. Also, Fran out of Manchester, she listed her 87-acre farm. They are a sheep farming operation there. And Alex was a neighbor down the road that they didn't know of each other, but they were both on the MiFarmLink platform, connected, and realized that they were very close to each other in terms of being neighbors. So they were able to lease out that land as well. So a couple of the other resources that MiFarmLink provides, we have regional representatives. So regional representatives are basically ambassadors to the MiFarmLink program. They will be, and I believe Allegra is actually pictured, is your region rep for 10 in this area of the WLEB. And she is able to promote MiFarmLink, share the information, kind of sit down with farmers, give them that one-on-one expertise. Available. Oh, thanks, Allison, for taking care of the chat. So you can see here our map is mimicking also the MACD region map, and you can see the farmers that and the conservation techs that are your regional representatives here on the page. We are still looking for region 1 and region 5 if you are interested or know somebody in those areas. We have also, through the American Farmland Trust, we were given a grant for land transfer navigators, and there are 2 in the state of Michigan. These folks have more of the land transfer expertise, and they're able to kind of assist and walk you through the process if you're having problems with your succession plan, if you're needing a really specific resource, if you're dealing with conservation easements. They are both highly knowledgeable about those as well. And so this is a good asset to our program. And lastly, we deal with our partnerships. We really rely on the folks who have been already been doing a lot of the good work on the ground, and we try to connect with them through webinars and educational series. Greenstone, we try to provide our new farmers with lending opportunities. We really work strongly with a lot of these. The Western Lake Erie Basin is one of them. Legacy Land Conservancy is another as well. So I like these quotes. We get our exit interviews in, and we were just making sure that we're providing a really good service to the public. Stephanie says, we are currently leasing a farm, and hopefully that doesn't change, but in case it does, we'd love to use MiFarmLink again. So it's not a one-time potential website at all. It's okay, we found somebody right now, it's working out great, but maybe we'll leave our profile unpublished for a short time, and then with the potential that it will they'll use it again. Emily says, I didn't know that we had farmers only 8 miles away. We're looking for livestock and land to lease. They didn't know I wanted to lease my operation, but MiFarmLink connected us. So some really good quotes from our farmers. So in 2025 alone, this was last year. So remember, we had just made that big move. So we made over 150 farmland connections. We linked over 511 acres in farming. We supported 655 farmers, and we listed over 94 available farm properties throughout the year. We've also really been picked up recently. We've had some NPR coverage, an MLive article that came out featuring Mr. Brockema, Farmer Brockema West, and kind of showcasing the real need for farmland preservation in this time period. So beyond those numbers, we've developed that strategic plan. We've partnered with MSU Extension. We really try to survey farmers about what their real needs are and what their challenges are. And a series of videos will be coming out from that after. We've also teamed up with TOP. They are the Transition to Organic Partnership Program for mentorship. And that's really, I think, even the first stepping stone to being able to get on property is making sure that you can get that that guidance and hand-holding experience for farming. So looking ahead, we're hoping to grow with a clear vision for the future, building a strong statewide FarmLink system to better connect farmers and landowners. We've been doing this for about 5 months now on a statewide status, and I think we're definitely moving towards that. So if you want to contact us or connect with us, we're on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And I thank you. And I will offer, I think, questions at the end after Susan is able to present.
Thank you, Jill. And I did post a bunch of links to things Jill referenced in the chat. And I'll send those out in an email too after this so that you have them handy. All right. Yeah, so now Susan can share her screen. All right, looks great.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for taking time out of your day to come and learn a little bit more about conservation and different ways to do that. I'm with Legacy Land Conservancy, as Allison mentioned, and we're a nonprofit land trust or land conservancy protecting and serving Southern Michigan since 1971. We are in our 55th year right now, so we're going to be having some celebrations coming up. We serve Washtenaw, Jackson, and Lenawee counties, which is in the southeast corner of Michigan, since I think I saw a few people are from around the country. We work to protect land primarily with conservation easements and fee lands, and then we also manage land that we own. And so far to date, we've protected over 10,000 acres of land in the 3-county area. And we are an accredited land trust since 2008 through the Land Trust Accreditation Commission, which is a national accreditation board. And we protect a variety of land. Some conservancies focus on, just farms or just natural areas or rec areas, but we try to do it all. We protect working farms, freshwater resources, and places to play. So this is a little map of our service area, and all the dark blue spots are properties we've protected. We have 114 conservation easements that we hold and monitor every year, and I'll talk a little bit more in the next few slides about what a conservation easement is. And we hold about 5,000 acres of that. And then we have 8 public nature preserves totaling over 400 acres, and at least 3 more planned for the coming years. And then the 10,000 acres number includes projects that we worked with partners on. So we're also very partnership oriented and like to leverage each other and lift each other up to all work to achieve conservation in the variety of ways that we do. So yeah, just a list of some of our partners. We work a lot with the conservation districts as well. MiFarmLink, the universities, Nature Conservancy, American Farmland Trust, our local cooperative invasive species management area, other local land trusts and watershed councils. And so some of the benefits of land conservation are protecting prime farmland, protecting open space, outdoor recreation, scenic beauty, clean air, fresh water, wildlife habitat, and one that really resonates with us as staff is that relief from urban closeness, when you just need to feel far away from things and take a deep breath of fresh air. So how we treat our land is reflected in water quality. So when we permanently protect land and prevent that conversion of the natural areas or of farmland, we're protecting the ecosystem services that the land and the ecosystems provide. So there are many ecosystem services, but a few common ones that people are familiar with are reducing sedimentation and pollutants that get into the water, preventing erosion and flooding because that water has somewhere to fall and slowly permeate and slowly move into the river or creek instead of all flooding in there at once and creating fast moving water at high levels. And it can also facilitate groundwater recharge, so allowing that water to flow deep down into the groundwater and help protect our drinking water while filtering out pollutants. And this is good for all of us for drinking water, recreation, and the ecosystems that we are a part of. So for conservation acquisitions, we have the 3 kind of light blue boxes on the left. Those are our 3 main tools that a land trust probably anywhere in the country would use, and that we focus on as well. So the top box is the conservation easement, and those can be donated to a land trust or sold. And there's also a middle option where you donate part of the value and get some money for that. There's assists, which we talked about a little bit earlier, where a partner protects the land, but maybe we helped with a part of the project or co-wrote a grant or put some money in. Or did the acquisition and then transferred it to someone else where the ownership made more sense in someone else's hands. And then nature preserves, which we would own and manage and generally open up to the public. And those can also be donated or sold to Legacy or another land trust. And then the third tier, the green on the right, is that these gifts can also be made during someone's lifetime or posthumous. So some people will write this into their wills or their trusts for their land to come to Legacy or another land trust at the time of their passing. So nature preserves, the tool most people are familiar with. It's property is sold or donated to a qualified organization, so a land trust. Some public entities also have these, probably familiar with state land, and a lot of the townships in Washtenaw County, also the townships accept land and own and manage parks. The property is then owned and managed by the organization. And depending on the organization, generally they will also manage that land. So remove invasive species, try to improve the natural native habitat on the property. But again, it depends on organizational capacity and the need for that. And also they're generally open to the public or limited access as a nature area, recognizing that even if the public can't go to the property necessarily, it's still providing other public benefits to the community, like that groundwater recharge or the filtration of pollutants and the slowing down of the water. And then donors do not have, or sellers do not have any future rights to that land. So you're essentially just selling the land like you would in the most common transaction that people are familiar with. So we talked about a little bit about some of the stewardship of these preserves. So legacy, we do more low impact, so I'm going to focus more on that. Low impact management, so we're not necessarily installing baseball fields or playgrounds, at least with the land that we have. So we do more natural areas where you can go and enjoy a local ecosystem and maybe bird watch or look at the bugs. We have some properties where kids like to put in fairy houses, so a little bit more of low impact nature enjoyment. So we have trail and boardwalk maintenance, habitat restoration, controlling of invasive species, and we also do plant and animal habitat monitoring and inventories on some as well. You can see in the picture on the bottom, we also do burns on some of our properties, as a lot of Michigan ecosystems have been burned in the past, and a lot of our native species respond well to being burned, and it can also help manage those invasive species in the right environment. So the other tool is a conservation easement. So in this scenario, the land remains privately owned, and the landowner releases some of their rights to legacy or another qualified organization who holds the easement. And that easement lays out what rights the landowner retains and what rights essentially they're having the land trust own and manage in perpetuity. And the property is not open to the public. So just kind of trying to balance that. We do love private lands and having public lands and public land access, but there's a lot of privately owned land that also contributes to our ecosystems and water quality and needs protecting for a variety of other reasons. And so the conservation easement was created as a way to make sure that we're also conserving lands that shouldn't necessarily be in public ownership or won't completely debase like a tax base for a township. So this is a pretty commonly used visual for a conservation easement. When you own property, you own a bundle of sticks associated with that property, which are all the rights that you have when you own a property. So that could be your mineral rights, development rights, right to grant easements, your use rights, ability to take liens out against the property and restrict the deed, water rights. There's a variety of different rights that you have when you own a piece of property. And the simplest way to kind of describe what a conservation easement does is essentially the landowner is taking the development rights and handing them to a conservation entity to hold them in trust for perpetuity. That being said, a lot of conservation easements do also restrict the use of mineral resources, like limiting extractions on the surface that might also negatively impact the conservation values on a property. But just to simplify it in a very visual way, this is how it's frequently talked about. So with a conservation easement, we identify the conservation values that we're working with the landowner to protect. So again, that can be prime and unique soils, open space, wetlands, water quality, and pretty much anything you can justify can go on the list. So we're constantly adding to that and tailoring it to each property that we protect. And then the easement will talk about what activities are permitted on the property based on the conservation values that we're protecting. And so again, these will be tailored. If we're protecting, 50 acres of woods, we're not necessarily going to allow row cropping on that property, and vice versa. If we have a property we're protecting the prime farm soils, it's not really going to be a great one to have as a natural area. So it's tailored to every property. We work with the landowner to talk about their future uses and what they would like to see, and have a lot of wiggle room with that. And then we will restrict some activities. So generally there's no additional subdividing of the property. Dumping, new utilities are generally limited. Some of these, again, there's wiggle room on, like if you have a 50-acre woods with no structures, but you want to build your dream house on it, we'll decide on an area together where you could build a house, and then no additional development may be permitted. But these are just kind of some of the conversations that we have when we are writing your conservation easement. And there are financial benefits for landowners entering into conservation easements as well, and for donating land as nature preserves. There are possible federal income tax benefits, and you can be paid for a portion of your development rights if you're unable to donate. It can prevent the pop-up tax for a property future buyers if you are putting a conservation easement on your property in Michigan. We haven't seen as much of this lately, but depending on your township, some townships will decrease your property taxes, recognizing that by limiting development, you are decreasing the value of your property. And revenue can also be used for a 1031 exchange, so to buy more land without getting taxed on that income. So local impacts that a land conservancy can make. We closed on an 80-acre preserve in Manchester area, Iron Creek Preserve. If you're in the area, it's very beautiful. I highly recommend you get out there. Then not too far from that, near Clinton, we closed on a 200-acre farm right on US 12, so a pretty big road where there's land on both sides of US 12, and that will forever remain in open space or agricultural use. We have over 500 acres of prospective projects along the River Raisin. We've been getting a lot of inquiries from the Manchester area, particularly with land on the River Raisin. And we are able to work and leverage federal dollars for non-point source pollution on those, again, for that benefit of recognizing that conserving these lands reduces the amount of pollutants in the future that might be entering into the river. And 900 acres of prospective projects in Lenawee County as well. So again, supporting conservation easements support water quality by limiting development, restricting industrial and commercial use on these properties, prohibiting the water course alteration and diversion of water, requiring buffers on bodies of water as well. A lot of our easements will require 100-foot or 50-foot buffer along a creek or a stream. Easements can prevent the clear cutting of forests and limit other vegetation removal and limit other activities that might negatively impact bodies of water on properties. So Washtenaw County in particular has been really successful with conserving land. Collectively between the county, Southeast Michigan Land Conservancy, the various townships that also do protection, and other partners, we've conserved around 18,500 acres of land in 22 years. Some of that in the northwest corner is also state land and scattered throughout the county. And so, we're nowhere near the where we would like to be, but it's helped us make a lot of progress over the last 22 years. So thanks again. I'm also around for questions. Here's my contact information. And if you want to keep up with Legacy and some projects we're working on, we have a lot of exciting things coming up. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and we also have an e-newsletter that you can join on our website. And we have a lot of volunteer opportunities too, if you just want to get out on the land and help us manage our preserves, or maybe go out and look at all those beautiful private pieces of property that we have to go visit once a year to monitor.
Great. Thank you both for your presentations.